So now I can throw the axe in any direction I choose. I can throw it from a crouching position, from a jumping position. I can just throw axes all day long.
I'm Xanderwood. I make indie games and tutorials on game development. I also play your indie games every week on my channel. Make sure you subscribe and click that bell icon so you never miss a video.
Guys, before we get into the video, just a massive shout out to my wonderful Patreon supporters: James Welch, Foozle CC, Basic Terrazam, Retro Galaxy, Fan Van, Mushinsky, Jet Simon, Olivier Bernier, Amari Lewis, Endmark Games, Matt and Seth Cobble for supporting my game dev journey. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your patronism, and let's get on with the video. Hey guys, welcome back to the Castlevania tutorial series. Sorry I took a couple of days off from making another episode of this. I was making some other videos which you may or may not enjoy, but either way they're there on the channel, so please feel free to watch them, like them, dislike them, whatever you like. Anyway, here we are. You may have noticed something's changed. I've taken the white outline away from my character. I just think it doesn't really need it. I think I like the aesthetic look without. So that's what I'm going to run with. Nothing else had a white outline, so he kind of looked a little out of place, looked a little bit bulky. So I've just gone around. It was a little time consuming, I'm not going to lie. That's why I didn't put it on video. But you can go ahead and take yours off if you've got one. Otherwise, feel free to leave it on. It's not really going to affect anything. So today we're going to be adding in an axe. Let's go to our event sheet. Not the functions, the player events. Now we're going to need a variable to control what weapon we have. So let's right click. Let's add a global variable. Let's just call it weapon. And this one's going to need to be a string. Leave it blank for the time being. Let's go back into player controls. Now the attack animation isn't going to change. Even though the weapon's going to change, the actual animation of the player isn't going to change. So if we go into attack 2, that's if we're crouching, it's basically just going to be throwing that arm forward. So whether or not we're throwing a dagger, we're throwing an axe, or whatever the weapons are that we use, that attack animation is going to be the same. We're just going to spawn in a different weapon each time. If we go down to the section that says attacking, the comment that we put above the events here, on the right arrow pressed, it says if attacking is true, spawn in the dagger. If frame is equal to 0, set attack, and S is down, set attack state to attack, otherwise attack 2. It's basically just determining whether or not we are crouching. So let's go back up to the top, and in our weapon global variable, let's change the initial value to dagger, because that is the weapon that we're going to start with. And then when we come down here back to our code, we can select the whole block here, and we're going to need to create another sub event. Make sure the whole thing is selected, push B on the keyboard. I'm going to drag this one just up above frame 0, and I'm going to double click in there, and I'm going to go check that variable now. So we're going to compare variable, and it's going to be weapon. And in between the quotation marks here, let's just type dagger. So when we press the right arrow key, we're going to check to see if that weapon variable is set to dagger. Now it will be, because that's exactly what we've set it to. So that's automatically going to be true. So now I want to just select this line, not the attacking true, just this one, and pop it down underneath. So that means if the weapon is dagger, we're going to spawn the dagger. So we can test that now, and it works exactly as it did before, which is great. Let's select the whole thing and push B again and get a second one and drag it just up underneath, and we're going to double click, and we're going to check now to see if the variable, not state, the weapon variable is now set to axe, which is the second weapon that we're going to spawn in. And if it is, then we're going to create a line just like this one, but we're going to spawn in the axe. Now let's go ahead and create the axe. We can probably just duplicate the dagger. So let's right click, clone the object type, pop it in. Make sure you're on the objects layer over on the layers panel. We're going to change this one to axe. I'm going to double click into it, and we're going to change the size of the box, because it's not long and thin like the dagger. It's going to be more of a square shape. So we're going to use these arrow resize keys here, and we're going to make it 12 by 12. I'm going to delete everything in there. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that color, because I want the colors to be kind of the same, which gives me that white color. If you hold down Control on the keyboard, you can just color pick from the actual image. Click on the black box there if yours is black. Secondary color is going to be blue. So we've got the original blue and the original white. Get rid of that. Now I'm going to do the handle first, which is blue. The handle, I'm just going to draw it straight up, right? Like this, in fact, all the way to the top. And then it probably needs to come down one. That's good enough for me, guys. You guys can make a better one if you want to. I'm just going to put a little bit of shading on the left and the undersides. And I'm probably going to shade the handle just a little bit of a darker blue. And I might take the bottom off and drop the top down. Now the bounding box needs to it needs to fit the sprite shape. So I'm going to just arrow key mine in to there. I think out to there. Make it nice and square, just so it's got the actual artwork in it. Let's just check the origin point. Now the origin point is important because this one's going to rotate, and it's going to rotate around its origin point. So let's right click, quick assign it to the middle, and that's going to spin around the middle. Now we've got the bullet behavior on that at the moment. We don't want the bullet behavior. So let's click on behavior. Let's delete the bullet behavior. Let's add a new one, and we're going to add the rotate behavior. We're going to also add in another one in a second, but we're going to start with the rotate. Now let me just drag it up onto the darker background, hit preview, and you can see that that's spinning quite nicely. However, I want it to be a lot faster, so let's change that to 400 on the speed. That's more like it, so it's nice and dangerous. Leave it at that, default the speed to 400, the acceleration can be 0, keep it as enabled, and we're going to click behaviors, and we're going to add a new behavior. This behavior is going to be the orbit behavior. If I can find it, orbit, there it is. Now if I click on the preview for the orbit, it's pretty big. Now that's way too big for us. I want to reduce the primary radius. Let's go by 50% on both. Now the primary and secondary radius, if these are equal, it's going to go in a perfect circle. And you can see that the arrow, the axe isn't. Let me just get rid of. Let me get rid of the show grid. You can see that the axe isn't spinning round as it's moving, and we can simply. Oh, let me just select the axe. Let me stop the preview. We can simply fix that by checking the preview button on both, and now we can see it's kind of spinning as if it's being thrown, but it doesn't kind of move that big of a circle in the game. So let's move the primary radius down to 30, and you can see now it's more of an oval because we haven't changed the secondary radius. So now it's kind of going up and across. And the secondary radius, let's bring it down to 40. And I think the speed could probably be a lot faster. So let's put that at 300 or 400. No, let's go with 3. And that's effectively the nuts and bolts of the behaviors of the axe on how that's going to work. We're not going to see it through the whole animation like this, so don't worry too much. Let's uncheck the previews. Let's go back to the original game and see what it looks like so we can replicate it. So you can see it kind of comes out. I just grab it here. You can see that it kind of comes out the top and just arcs over and then disappears when it goes off the screen. And if he's facing the other way, it just arcs over. So remember, that origin point is where it's going to spawn from. So if we spawn it from here and then preview that, it's going to go out to the side and round. Okay, so I've decided to take the orbit behavior off because I just see that creating more problems, and I've given it the physics behavior because I want it to just continually fall to the ground. So I want it to be affected by gravity. So with the physics behavior added, with nothing changed on the settings, if I put the axe to the top, and obviously I've got the rotate behavior on it, when we click play, you can see that it falls quite naturally to the ground, which is exactly what I want in terms of its weight. So I need to now add impulses to it in the code when we spawn it. Now it's already destroy outside of layout, so I can just pop it down there and it will destroy. In fact, let's add that to the dagger as well, because we don't want that going on forever. Now let's get into the event sheet. In fact, let's get into the functions and let's create a new function, and we're going to call this axe spawner. So we're going to call this function every time we attack with the axe. Now, what do we want the axe to do? So we're going to have an action, and we're going to go to the axe, and let's go down to the physics properties down here. We can apply forces, which is what we want. We want to apply a force at an angle, or we want to apply an impulse at an angle, not a force, an impulse. The impulse, let's just say 5, and the angle is going to be, and if we look at the compass view, angle 0 is directly right, 180 is directly left, 270 is up. So if I just say 270, that'll go straight up in the air when we call this spawner. So let's go back to the player events. Let's go down here where it says axe, not dagger, axe. I'm going to hold down control. I'm going to copy out that line of text where it says spawn dagger, and I'm going to change the dagger to the axe. On the objects layer, that image point attack, this is all going to be the same. So now when we push right, if the text up here says axe, let's go ahead and change that now so it is. And now that should just spawn in our axe. Now at the moment we're not calling that function, so what I would imagine is going to happen is we're going to spawn in the axe and it's going to fall straight to the floor and beyond the floor. There we go. So now we have a very impotent attacking weapon. We can throw it wherever we want and it just falls, and then remember it's got that destroy outside of layout ability, condition, what am I saying? Event behavior, so it's going to destroy itself when it falls. It's not implying the impulse, so let's go ahead and go back to player events, and let's now say spawn axe, and then underneath add action we're going to go function, and we're going to call the axe spawner, and nothing works. You can kind of see it is working a little bit there. So what we need is another line of code, and we can put this at the bottom here, just in the add to player controls. Let's click that. We're going to find the axe, and we're going to say on created. So immediately when the axe is created, we are now going to call the axe spawner. And it's still not working. So let's go ahead and have a look at what the axe spawner is. We're applying the physics at 5. Let's put that at 0.2. Yeah, so you can see now every time we're pushing it, we've got some weird impulse. Now 0.2 does still seem, it's just not right, is it? So let's go back to the events. Let's first of all just put a sub event under on created and just add trigger once. It's going to only be triggered once on the actual axe. Okay, forget that. Get rid of the trigger once. Oh, get rid of the trigger once. Let's go back to the axe spawner and put on here trigger once, or true. Let's just try force at angle. Put the force at 1. That's not working. Set impulse towards position. Here we go. Not force. Let's set impulse towards position. Let's set the impulse at 1, and let's set the position to self.x, which is where it is, and then we want it to go to the right, which is plus 32 pixels. See how that looks. We also want it to go up, so self.y, which is where it is, and minus is up at minus 32 pixels. Now it's doing it, but it's not doing it on created. It's creating it, and then it's not applying that until I hit the button again, which is strange. So I might drag that back up here on the if weapon is axe command. Get rid of on created. So now we've got, when we press the right arrow key, set attacking to true, and if the weapon is equal to axe, create the axe. In fact, what we could probably do is take this spawn the axe, and we can put that in the axe spawner function here. There we go. There we go. Now we're just throwing it way too hard. So let's change that to 0.1. There we go. Now we've got a lot of axes that we can throw, but when we face the other way, we're throwing them behind us. So that's the next thing we need to fix. We also need to throw these a little bit higher because the trajectory is not right. So let's go 64 on the Y. It's still not high enough. Let's try 128 on the Y. I don't like how these are bumping into each other, but we aren't going to be able to throw them as fast. We're going to have to put a cooldown on these. But I don't think... In fact, it's not the... We're not increasing that, we're increasing the impulse. You should really just ignore half of what I say. Yeah, that's way too hard. There's a real sweet spot. 0.2. Okay, so I think it's going high enough now, but it's not going... In fact, I don't like how far to the right he's throwing it. Let's just put self.x. Oh no, it has to go out to the right a little bit. Self.x plus 4. Better, but too high. Let's reduce the impulse. So a lot of what I'm doing is just tweaking. You could probably just fast forward through this. In fact, I'll probably just edit this out. Let's go 0.1 again. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy with the way that works. Now, what I've settled on is 0.15 on the impulse, and then the x is the x position is self.x plus 8, and on the y is minus 32. I'm happy with that, and I've got it on trigger once on the spawn axe spawner, and we're going to obviously create that axe sprite. So let's go back to the game. Let's click on the axe. Collision mask, I'm going to set that to, in fact, I don't want it bouncing off other things. So, in fact, let's take the friction down to 0. That will enable it to spin a little bit more. I don't want them bumping into each other and kind of being a mess. So, I don't know if physics is going to be the way to go, guys. See, in my head, I had this all mapped out. I was like, it's going to be so easy. I'm going to take off the physics. We're still going to call in the axe spawner, but I am going to remove the physics behavior from the axe. I'm going to keep the rotate behavior. I'm going to add the platform behavior. So I might need to even add, I'm going to even add another behavior to this. This is getting out of hand. There's too many behaviors. I want to add the bullet. Don't want to set the angle. Speed 200. Now we're just kind of throwing them on the floor. So we're getting closer to what we want. I just need to throw it up into the air. Well, what I could do is the bullet behavior is by default on. So when we create it, we're going to set the angle of motion. We're going to set the angle of motion to 300. And now they're bouncing off of the floor. Why are they bouncing off of the floor? Because we've checked We haven't checked bounce off solids. Gravity, in fact, we can add gravity at 1500. In fact, I don't think we're even going to need the platform behavior. So let's go ahead and take that off. We can just go bullet speed 200, gravity 1500. Don't bounce off solids. Don't need the set angle. There we go. Why did it take me so long to sort that out? I obviously haven't used the bullet behavior as much as I could have done. We still need to set the angle of movement a little bit higher. So let's go 290. I'm going to set the speed a little bit faster at 300. I'm going to reduce the gravity down to 1000. And there we go. Gee whiz, guys, honestly, I do apologize for making you suffer through that, but I mean, it's just late in the day for me. I don't know what's going on. But either way, we've got that. Now we need to reverse it. So let's continue. If you've still got faith in my ability to teach you how to make a game, then continue on with me. So let's go back to the functions. We're going to say on created. We're going to add a sub event. So remember, select the whole thing, push B on the keyboard. Now we need to do a check on the player and see if the player is mirrored. Add another sub event, and I'm going to hold down control and copy that down and invert it with I. Now, if the player is not mirrored, we're going to set it to what we had it. If the player is mirrored, we need to set it the opposite direction. So 270 is straight up. So if I add 20 to 270, I get 290. If I subtract, I get 250. So now I can throw the axe in any direction I choose. I can throw it from a crouching position or a jumping position. I can just throw axes all day long. I need to set a cooldown timer so we can't spam the attack button. And that's what we're going to add in next. Let's set a global variable. Right click at the bottom of your player events, add a global variable, and we're going to call this axe cooldown. It's going to be a number. It's going to be 2. Quite simply, when we throw an axe, we're going to start the timer. When it gets to 0, we're going to reset it. So let's go back to the functions on axe spawner. When we call that spawner, we're going to add an action. And we're going to say system. Sorry, we're not. We're going to add a condition. So on axe spawner, push B on the keyboard for a sub event, double click, and we need to compare that new variable, that axe cooldown timer. We need to compare it, and we're only going to be able to throw axes if the value is equal to 2. Let's drag the action now down in here. So now if the axe spawner cooldown is equal to 2, then we can throw the axe. Now if we play it, we can, because our axe cooldown variable just sits there at 2 on the event sheet here, and it doesn't do anything. So once we call the spawner, now we need to set the timer. So we're going to need to create a Boolean variable. So let's go back to the player events. We're going to add a global to the top. So right click at the bottom, add global variable. It's going to be a Boolean, and this one is going to be called can throw. And then the initial value is yes, because we can throw. So now when we call the function, we immediately now need to turn the Boolean variable to false. So we're going to set Boolean can throw to false. So that means when we throw it once, we're only going to be able to throw it once, because immediately after we've thrown it, we're setting the Boolean, but we can throw it as many times as we want. Oh no, because we haven't set. In fact, we don't even need this cooldown timer. I mean, this tutorial is really going down the route of, let's say something will work and then it won't work and then we'll change it. So we can call this a kind of a journey of discovery together. So let's put the spawn axe thing back up there. Let's get rid of that. I do apologize, guys. You have put your trust in me to make this remake, and I am really struggling through it. Let's get rid of the cooldown timer. All we need to do is just set a system wait. So we can say axe spawner set can throw to false, add action, system wait. Let's wait 1 second, and then we're going to set the can throw to true, and that's going to be a 1 second cooldown before we can throw again. Now, I think, in fact, we can probably just put a sub event here, and then we can just check that boolean. Is boolean set can throw, then throw an axe. After we've thrown it, set it to false, and then wait 1 second. And then set it back to true. So there we go. The function basically consists of this boolean statement that says if we can throw an axe, let's throw one, and then once we've thrown it, let's make it so we can't throw one, wait a second, and then make it so that we can throw one again, and then this whole block becomes relevant. So now I can spam the attack button, but you can see he's waving his arm in the air now, which creates another bug that we need to address, because we don't want him to be impotently throwing nothing into the air when the player is mashing the spam button. So we need to fix that. So let's go back to player events. Let's go back down to this one here. If weapon is equal to axe, call the axe spawner. On pressed, set attacking to true. Where are we telling it to go to the animation? That's what we want. We want the animation. Here we go. If animation frame is equal to 0. In fact, we don't even need that because we're going to be playing the same attack animations anyway. I think I was going to have a different animation play originally in my mind, so we don't even need that that HUD thing anymore because we've got that global variable controlling axe. So let's just take these two. We can take them out of the HUD thing because that HUD item is going to change anyway, and we can just pop these up under here under this one press right arrow key, and then it will check these two. We can get rid of that entirely. We won't need that anymore. Now we can say here this on if S is down, and we need to check the boolean. So we can say, in fact, not even on that one. Let's do it on the initial arrow press key here. So highlight the section in the middle, push C on the keyboard, go to the system, go to the boolean, can throw. Now we're basically saying if we're pushing the arrow key and we can throw, then set attacking to true, and then this will fix all of our issues. So now we can only throw once, but it's a bit of a long delay. I feel like we should be able to throw a lot faster than this, and also when we've got the dagger, it's going to slow that down as well. So let's go back to the function on the axe spawner, and let's change the 1 second time to 0.3. So there's going to be a slight delay, but not a huge one. There we go. Now we can throw axes out to our heart's content in any direction we want. We can't spam it because it will only go as fast as the cooldown will let us. If we change our weapon back to dagger, which we will do in game in the next episode by collecting different weapons, then we've got the dagger. But again, we can throw this one a little bit too quickly. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that entire function, and I'm going to change the name from axe spawner to dagger spawner. And this is where we're going to need to change this object. So we can go back into the player events, and this will tidy things up anyway. If weapon equals dagger, we're going to cut Control X, and we're going to paste Control V in there. We're going to set the can throws booleans on and off, and we are now just going to call that function dagger spawner. There we go. Now we can only throw it as fast as the spawner, and we can set different spawn times for these. Like if you want the axe to be slower, we can set it like so. You in kind of RPG, not RPGs, in certain games where you've got a variety of weapons, if you've got like a big heavy axe, it may deal double the damage, but you may want a slower cooldown, so you can only swing it slowly. Whereas if you've got a lighter weapon like a dagger, you might want to be able to throw it faster, but it might not do as much damage. But there you go. That's it for this episode. Thanks for struggling through that with me. That was a bit of a mission, I must say, but we got there in the end. We can now throw daggers, we can throw axes, And in the next episode, we will update this HUD element. We're going to add these little pickups that can fall down in the shape of different weapons that we can collect, which will then determine what secondary weapon we're holding at the top of the game.